Well, good evening, Phil Lyman, Tracie Halverson, and Dr. Richard Fleming. We're going to get started right away. So, Tracie, I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you take the mic.
So, as everybody knows, we got a decision to not hear the case at this time for Phil's petition for certiorari, but that does not mean that we are wrong, and we still have a lot of other avenues. The court gets to choose. It always says it chooses to see if they want to hear it or not. And sometimes when they feel that there is still another avenue that you can do to solve the problem, then you can actually, it'll be okay to maybe take another case that maybe doesn't have another option, and that seems what they've decided to do, but that does not mean we are done. And that means that all of you guys that are watching and still involved, you don't give up, because there's still other options that we have, and you'll be able to get involved as well. And I will have more information and a website on that too as we move forward. But there is still a lot more to do, and I think it's pretty neat that we got actually to a conference, so at least they are aware of it.
You know, for everybody to be aware, the Supreme Court cannot possibly address everything that comes to it. Over 99% of what comes to it, it basically says, we're not going to listen to this. It doesn't mean they've judged it. It doesn't mean they're looking at the party submitting and saying, you're wrong. Because if that was the message, they would hear it and then they would tell you, you're wrong. This is, it may be a bad example, but just bear with me because it just popped into my brain as you were talking, Tracie. This is like being a parent and your kids come to you and they have a dispute. Now, sometimes you solve that dispute because it's critical. It needs to be solved. You can't have people, beating in other kids' heads. You can't do that. But most of the time, I think we look at them and we say, okay, listen, we've tried to teach you how to resolve problems. We want you to go back and resolve it. And if I were a Supreme Court justice looking at this case, I think it would be reasonable to say, listen, if the people of Utah, given the fact that Mr. Lyman, unless I'm wrong, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, has got more write-in votes than any other candidate in history. I think it's reasonable for the Supreme Court to say, listen, we've got a lot of very major things going on right now. TikTok, President Trump, a few other things, kind of maybe more pressing. Maybe the people of Utah can take a look at this situation and say, in their own home, the kids, for lack of a better analogy, need to sit down and figure out how they're going to solve the problem. And then if you can't, I suppose you get to go back to mom and dad, the Supreme Court. But I think this is a clear message from the Supreme Court, not that Mr. Lyman is wrong, but that the Supreme Court believes that it's within the capacity of the people of Utah, should they choose to solve their problem, to figure it out and to act responsibly. And, one of the things that I frequently, I get a lot of questions about what am I doing with the 10 Letters campaign and the origins of these viruses campaign and other issues. And the reality is I can be out there leading it, but until people get behind you, firmly behind you, and decide they're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with you, one person pulling this, even though there has to be a lead, can't do it by themselves. And I think the Supreme Court's message was, this is not national security. These are not states fighting amongst each other for water rights and other issues. This is not an ambassador of the United States. This is the state of Utah, and you need to get your house in order. And I think that that's the message that was sent.
And I agree. I actually think we have an opportunity coming up, a huge opportunity. They start session next week. Well, we don't need them to call people to session to impeach Cox. So we can start sending letters to our legislature and stating, impeach him, or they become liable because he never qualified for the ballot. And this gave us an opportunity learn about the law and all the other court cases, that now we will have that information there for the people to understand it, because he did not qualify for the ballot. He was unlawfully certified. So you're in session, so go ahead and impeach him, because that's what you should use it for.
So Phil, what are you hearing on your side?
Well, I was just going to say this has been a huge educational process, not just for me, but for all the people in Utah that are watching this, and to learn, what a conference is versus a hearing, and to see that it was picked up for conference. It's an important case to Utah, and there's a lot of people who are very engaged in this. So we've done a lot to educate people, not just in the last couple of months, but in the last year, honestly, educating people about this. And I think the message probably is, just as Dr. Fleming says, it's like, take care of this in Utah, because this is a Utah problem. And that doesn't mean that we have to be, have feelings of animosity here in Utah. It's a genuine problem. Spencer Cox didn't get his signatures. Had he gotten his signatures, then we may have a better question as to whether those signatures mean anything in this context. He didn't win the convention. All these things are important, in a system of government that believes that just powers are derived from consent of the people. And if we're showing clearly that there was not consent of the people to elect Governor Cox, through the convention, through the signature process, through the primary process, I think that creates, I guess, another opportunity, back to Dr. Fleming's point, another opportunity for people to say, well, is this okay? Are we going to accept it? Or are we going to speak up about it and talk to our legislators, talk to the media, and keep pushing this forward? So that's kind of where it feels like we're at right now.
And let me address your media in Utah. I saw some postings by the media, I won't mention which ones, on the internet during the weekend prior to the court releasing its orders on Monday. And while it seemed obvious to me that, given the fact that they did grant 3 cases of writ of certiorari on Friday, your media did not know, Cox's office did not know, nobody outside of the Supreme Court knew what their decision was on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So the people that were responsible for being journalists, the people that were responsible for being elected officials, who blurted out inappropriately, like a second grader, that your case had been denied, that lack of restraint and professionalism speaks poorly to everybody who couldn't hold it in until Monday.
Right.
And that's another problem you need to address in Utah, which is, who is going to be your credible journalist, who is going to be taken seriously as a professional, either an elected official or anybody else, when they are out there running around like a second grader saying, I won, without any knowledge base. And they didn't win anything. It was not heard. They didn't win anything. The Supreme Court did not say Mr. Cox was right and you were wrong.
And another thing too, Dr. Fleming, sorry to cut you off there. I think Phil knows, Tracie knows, we all know. I mean, the people, of Utah know that none of the media, the KSL, the Salt Lake Tribune, the Deseret, no one picked up anything on Phil. You know what? And it's quite frustrating because Mike Lee didn't even pick it up. There's good and bad about Mike Lee, but it's going to be the alternative media because none of the other media is willing to take a stance for that. And I think, Phil, you probably agree there just by what happened on the desert when the other Lyman dropped out and your picture was there.
It's a really interesting dynamic with social media out there and everybody with an opinion and talking and it's never done in a dignified, mature way. It's always, just throwing things back and forth. And yeah, you can kind of pick out through all of the social media, all of the noise. There is a signal in there, and the signal is really clear that we've got a legislature that does not want transparency, that is going to uphold the obfuscation that's going on instead of addressing it. They're going to uphold the establishment, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and they're playing politics. And the more they play politics, the more, I guess, it's apparent to people, whether it's through the media. Our challenge, honestly, is trying to maintain a reasonable dialogue in the midst of all of that. I think we've done an amazing job. The case itself, the case that we presented was so well put together and so many good arguments. And it's on the face of it, to me, it's very cut and dried. It doesn't mean that the Supreme Court needs to hear it or make a decision on it, but the people, if they're willing to do a little bit of homework, and we're seeing it, and it's been going for, like I say, for months. There is a movement, and the movement is, do we want corrupt government, or would we prefer some transparency and accountability from our government?
Right. Well, and you can use my legal case as an example. My case, my job is to make people aware of the abuse of power that occurred. Right. Trump's response is to make people aware of the abuse of power that occurred. I think one of the hurdles for people to get over is this perception that just because the founding fathers thought that we would be an honest people and only use the system properly doesn't mean that centuries later the people are being honest and using it properly. So we know that people in power abuse their power. I mean, today, Bondi's Senate Judicial Committee hearing was replete with examples from both sides pointing out that the Democrats did not want her to practice lawfare. And most of her response and most of the Republican response was, and the reason for asking these questions is because we just saw lawfare practiced for the past 4 years.
Right.
And, a lot of people don't mind something bad happening to somebody else. But when it happens to them, now they sit up and they suddenly realize, so in my case, all the critics that I've had, one of my, I think, best responses has been, in the last 5 years, you've all had had the opportunity to get the prostate exam that I got. And you're not all really happy about it. And for anybody who's there in Utah looking at you right now and saying the Supreme Court denied your case, so you must be wrong, that's not what the Supreme Court said, number one. But if they like what happened to you, they should get ready for it to happen to them, because people have this perception that it will always happen to somebody else, but it won't happen to me. And the problem on that is that every time it happens to one more person, it makes it even more possible for the next group of people, and this is one of the, I know I'm going off on tangents, but yeah, they're as they come to me. One of the reasons why the founding fathers put a separation between church and state. Because if you were to think, and I don't mean to offend anybody, so if this bothers you, just bear with it. It's me. Blame it on me. The founding fathers did not found the United States on Christianity. Now, they were Christians. There's no doubt about that. But they did not want the country to be Christianity, because if you make the country about a religion and another religion gets into power, guess what happens? Now it's not everybody has a right to their religious perspective. Now you have another religious group taking over. And we've seen in the Middle East what this does. When radical groups of people that claim of their religious beliefs, now they're in power, hurt other people. And during the last 4 years, I would argue that part of Bondi's response today was that Christians were attacked for standing outside of an abortion clinic. And independent upon what you think of abortion, you should still be able to say people should have a right to be outside protesting one way or the other. Again, this all falls into that when you're happy to allow somebody else to be put through a negative experience, you should expect it to happen to you. So in the state of Utah, everybody right now should be going, the Supreme Court has given us an opportunity to do our job with Mr. Lyman and the other individuals in the state who want the system to work. And it's up to us to stand up, or we're going to be the next ones to experience the negative consequences.
Agreed on that. So Phil, do you feel that really where we are right now, where do you feel like it may have impact on other legal challenges in Utah while we continue to fight for what is right in your case?
Well, there's a couple of things that are happening right now. The Attorney General's office is doing an investigation on the whole signature process, focusing mainly on Governor Cox's because his has already been shown to have been deficient. And even though that's not the point that we're making with this case to the Supreme Court, it's really important, if a person if the only way they get onto the ballot is by submitting 28,000 valid signatures, and they don't do that. And we had a state auditor's report that indicated that he said it's statistically likely that he did, but that means by what they looked at, he didn't get it. And then the legislative audit said he didn't get it. And then there's thousands of ballots or thousands of signatures turned into the Attorney General's office because they were clearly fraudulent, written in by one person on packet after packet. That's a criminal action, and it's being taken that way. So I guess the effect that this has is maybe to the color of law, and maybe the Attorney General is saying, how many times can we, brush this aside? At some point, someone's got to say that this is just not the way we do politics in Utah. And if they don't do that, then the converse is true, and it's saying this is how we do politics in Utah. You want a high office in the state. Just know the right people, and nothing else matters. No, the laws don't have any bearing.
So to your point though, Phil, even though we don't argue that signature process applies to us, it is huge in all of this case because that's how they have conspired this whole mechanism.
Right.
They've used the signature process to actually do the cheat, because even the Davis County clerk, they did not have that authority to pick one county clerk to review all statewide signatures. So they've used the signature process as their mechanism to me, steal it. That's what they're using. That's the fraud. That's where what they use to use the fraud. They've construed the law. They've used that process. So it is very important to say, look what it's doing. They've used that to get to the ballot, and they can't even say they gathered the signatures. It's all fake.
Well, and using statistical terms, those are used when you don't have absolutes, right? You either do or don't have 28,000 signatures. And I'm not sure how slow the counting is in Utah.
Slow.
But, November 5th, and this is January 15th. Now, I don't know how fast you have to count and how tired people may be of counting, but, it's pretty simple. You get people and they start counting, and they count from A to B, and they say, this is X number of signatures, right? which is pretty easy because somebody else can come behind them and count that and go, yep, you were able to count to 128. And then the next person starts at 129 and counts so many. And you can do that. And it boggles my mind that some people would say it doesn't take much, but it boggles my mind that with over 2 months, nobody has sat down or groups of people together and counted to see if there's 28,000. I mean, this is not like 2 billion. It's 28,000, right? I mean, how long does that take? I mean, you don't have to, it's not a matter of let's do it overnight. It's a matter of, give me a month. Give me a month. We'll count them. 28,000. I mean, can we do the math? Somebody get a calculator here while I'm on my rant. And,
start adding up.
Let's see. Listen, 60 minutes an hour times 8 hours is 480 minutes times 5 days, because we would not want anybody to work on the weekend. Okay, is 2,400 times 4 weeks is 9,600. So you've got 9,600 minutes in a month. Okay, now I don't want to make anybody strain themselves mentally, but if you take 9,600 into 28,000, okay, you don't have that many signatures you have to count per minute 5 days a week for 4 weeks to know whether you got 28,000, right? Right? I mean, this is not really high-powered math, right? 28,000 divided by that 9,600 is, oh my, you would have to count 2.9 signatures per minute. Now, I'm not sure how bad the education system is in Utah. Okay? But you ought to have them counted by now a couple times. Instead of, well, statistically, I think we might. Look, I'm a physics guy. I work on probabilities, and I'm good with that, but I don't think you probably want to work in some of the probabilities and theories that I do. This isn't probabilities. This is 2.916666. In other words, 3 would do it. So 1 signature every 20 seconds. I sure hope I don't have to do the math for people, right? 60 seconds divided by 3 is 20 seconds per signature. That's your math problem, right? And you haven't done it. And I don't care how cute you are or rich you are or well-connected you are, you can't give me a good argument for why those 28,000 signatures haven't been counted 2.5 times by now, except they don't want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, that suggests you have maybe a conflict of interest.
So Phil, what you were just talking about, where are they wanting to take that? What's going to be the outcome, or what would the outcome need to be?
Well, it's interesting because, the legislative auditors, and they'll tell you that their work is prospective. It's to help legislators make decisions moving forward. So you've got all these legislators that are saying, oh, it's ridiculous that Phil Lyman, thinks that there was a problem with the signatures, but we're going to introduce legislation to fix all the problems with our transparency on our signatures. We're going to pass legislation that takes control away from the lieutenant governor and divides that up a little bit. All these things that they're saying are not a problem. They're passing legislation to address that. And then with the audit itself, so they've had 16, and they're doing a lot more than just the governor's signatures, than just Spencer's signatures. They've had 16 people working full time for 3 months now. And so to Dr. Fleming's point, that's enough time to know something. And of course, you get the politics of this, Laurie, that I don't want to make innuendos, but when you take the auditor, the state auditor, John Dougal, who I respect, and he did an audit, came out and clearly found problems, but explained those problems away. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. If they'd have known, they would have had more time. So he explains those things away, and then he is replaced. It loses his bid for the Congress and gives up his seat in the attorney, excuse me, in the auditor's office, and becomes the director for the attorney general's office. At the same time that they're investigating the attorney general's signature, Derek Brown's. And so it just starts to look like, okay, no matter what you come up with now out of the attorney general's office, you can't claim that it's an independent review, even though they've got a lot of good people in the auditor's office. I trust all the information, but it's all taken in the context of that. So you've got legislators that are trying to pass legislation to be the champions of this, even though they're not willing to champion it for 2024. They want to champion it for 2028 or 2026. And then you've got an investigation that is being taken from all accounts pretty earnestly. If they've got 16 people working full time for 3 months,
And so
that's not a small thing.
that's where I get a little frustrated too, Phil, is the legislature. They say, oh, we're going to pass a new law. And I'm like, you don't need to. Just follow the law that you have. It says 29 counties. She cannot centralize that.
Exactly.
There's nothing that provides that.
Yeah,
So every time they say, oh, we'll fix it. No, it just needs to be
it's all providing cover. Yeah, it's all providing cover.
Yeah.
Do you think that the
Laurie,
oh,
look, I'm sorry. Laurie and I have talked about this several times on different legislation that's being passed. Every time somebody says they want to pass a piece of legislation, typically what people do is they say, well, that makes sense because that means this to me. It doesn't matter what it means to you. The important thing is what it means to the person passing that legislation. And for a country that I collectively hear we need less government and fewer laws, I'm always astonished at how many laws get passed. Because every one of these laws means you're making something illegal. That's what it means. The question you need to ask is, what is it they're making illegal, right? And it may very well be you and something you do. I mean, Laurie and I have looked at this last time around when there were laws on being considered for the books in Utah. And, you know, my perspective of what those laws were trying to be passed for was completely different than the people in Utah. But I will guarantee you, anybody who deals with constitutional law will tell you, or if you go to a law college and you get that JD, they will teach you that you're supposed to read the documents of the intent of the people who passed the laws, which is why the Federalist Papers are so important, to understand what the Founding Fathers meant when they put the Constitution together. You know, when they scrapped the Articles of Confederation and they wrote the United States Constitution. What were these people thinking? Not what do you think they were thinking? What did they say they were thinking? And you don't get that oftentimes today when you're hearing a piece of legislation passed, because they don't want you to know what they're thinking. So the perspective of let's have more laws, if you take us from 1776 to where we are now, and you make it a triangle at the bottom, the laws in 1776 to where we are now, we have a lot more laws, and I would argue a lot more problems, not fewer problems. So to your point, I think it was Tracie who said this, you don't need new legislation. You need to quit breaking the laws that you already have. And by the way, that's what they're doing. When your legislators and people in office are not following the laws, they are real criminals.
And as a follow-up to that, Phil or Tracie, I think the concerns of what I'm hearing on citizens like me and some of the other followers is that we have a feeling they're going to try to put more bills into place before the next election to even lock it down and steal it further, because now they know some of the mistakes that they made with this one. So how, from their perspective, how do they screw us even more?
I think you just go to Washington, D.C. right now, because Biden has not left office yet. The possibility of pardons for people in Utah have not run their course.
Well, Go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead.
I mean that the dynamic here is really interesting, and Dr. Fleming can attest to this. It's not lawbreakers that get punished; it's truth tellers. And you tell the truth, and you find that you have so much more opposition, and it's coming from right from the heart of the beast, right from the core. You know, the establishment, the people have so much invested in this. And if one thing has changed, I believe in the last 4 years, and again, thank you, Dr. Fleming, for telling the truth about some of this stuff, is people are looking and saying, I think I was lied to. I think I was lied to about January 6th. I think I was lied to about COVID and vaccines and whatever the case might be. Our schools, DEI, all of this stuff. These fires that are happening right now in California they're a testament to bad policy motivated by corrupt motives instead of by, taking care of the people. And whether it's, you look at those reservoirs that are drained out there, it's like, that's not an accident. It's not by coincidence. It's not like, oh, dang, we were doing the very best we could and we just accidentally left our reservoirs dry. No, these things happen maliciously and methodically. I always say schemers are 10 steps ahead of people of goodwill. We just don't think as far forward as they do. And right now their back is up against the wall. If you're Spencer Cox and your signatures are truly in jeopardy, you're not saying, oh, maybe it's time to come out and do a press release about why I'm upset with the signature gathering company. No, it's like, how do we double down? How do we shut up Phil Lyman and Tracie Halverson? And how do we shut these people up? And that's a dangerous spot to find yourself in, because they have ways of, intimidating honest people.
But I think that's a reason to keep going for you.
Absolutely.
As far as for
It's
the podcast,
confirmation.
to disclose these
Yeah.
the corruption that's still going to be going on. When they go to enter what the sessions that they're getting ready to go in, and hopefully we've got some new people in office. I know Mike Kennedy was in. People that are really willing to stand up and call a spade and stop the corruption.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if we have any of those in there. Phil was like the only one.
Well, and the reality is it takes very little time to compromise people that go in with the best intentions if everything around them is corrupt. I mean, you either play ball. There aren't that many people that are just either
Principled.
Okay, that's kind. Thank you.
It's
to stand up and say, I'm going to do what's right, period. And the young people who may or may not listen to this, nobody's going to tell you early in life that there is a price that you will pay for doing the right thing. But I have always said that the price that I have paid for doing the right thing, I can live with. Mm-hmm. I can live with. I'm never going to get back from the harm of that. So you have to decide up front. It helps to know up front. You're going to get opposition. You're not going to get patted on the back. When you do get patted on the back, you won't know what the heck to do with it, because it doesn't happen often enough to say, it's more of a shock. Same thing here, with what you're doing, Phil, because you're trying to stand up for the people of Utah. It's your state. You want your state to be a good state to live in. You wanted a good state for your friends to live in. You wanted a good state for their children and your children. You wanted a good state for your friends to come visit you in. You want to be able to show off Utah and say, this is a place to come and live and be and have a family and be proud of. These are the things you want to do, but you're doing it against people that have said, we like living here and we don't mind breaking the rules, because if there's enough of us breaking the rules, we can push you into the corner if you don't want to break the rules. You're the good. I'll give you an example from 8th grade in junior high in Spanish class. And during Spanish class, one of the days our teacher was sick and we had a substitute. And that substitute teacher, the students said, well, it's a birthday today. And during birthdays, we just celebrate. And they said, whose birthday is it? And the kids looked at me and they said, well, it's his birthday. It's Richard's.
Right.
And the teacher looked at me and she said, is it your birthday? And I said, yes. The problem was they thought that they had coerced me to go along with it. The reality was it was my birthday, right? But they thought that they had put me in such a circumstance that I would acquiesce to the pressure that they were doing, that after class they said, yeah, good going. You went along with it. It's like, no, I didn't go along with it. They were so corrupt. They could not even see that their corruption hadn't influenced me. I was being honest. But
It was your birthday.
Honesty. It was my birthday. It's like, well, the odds of that, it's 1 in 355 or 366, depending upon the year.
So with that said, as Phil, as you and Tracie keep fighting in the background, fighting for what's right, what would you like the citizens of Utah to do to help? Because I know there are a lot more awake people. There's a lot of woke people coming in from California. We know that. We see what's happening in Salt Lake. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
And right now, a lot of broke people coming in.
Right.
Right.
Well, we're going to do kind of like similar to your 10 letter idea, because to me, we should be messaging the legislature and just not standing for it. Cox never qualified for the ballot. He's illegitimate. Same with Derek Brown. Derek Brown was disqualified at the convention, and the law says that we can document it and we can prove it. And plus, then the signatures. We don't even know if they've got the signatures or not. So there is going to be like 10 letters. You send a letter and then ask 10 people to say, we want Cox removed. They have the power to remove him. And they need to. They'll be in session. So,
might I suggest that if you do that, you drive the point home by calling it 10 signatures. Okay. You want the people to get together and count 10 signatures, and the next person can count 10 signatures, and the next person can count 10 signatures until you either do or don't get to 28,000 signatures. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
I guess. Let's see where the signatures are at. Have people come in and count 10 signatures, sign their name to it, 10 signatures, add up the total. There was 190. I added 10. There's now 200. The next person comes in and does 10 signatures. 10 signatures over and over.
We should use that as sarcastically, though, Richard. I think we should say, let's show him how many signatures we can get and ask how many people we can send in the letters.
I didn't say it wasn't sarcastic. And that would probably be a nice adjective for what, or adverb for what it was.
I will say, and I love that story about your birthday, Dr. Fleming, because every day is a good day when you find the reality, when you find the truth. I don't want to be deceived. If I'm wrong, I would rather know that I'm wrong than have people tell me that I'm right. I'm not trying to push a lie. I'm not trying to promote a lie. I'm trying to promote the truth. And I guess as you were telling that story, I was thinking about the first year when I was a young dad and was going to go coach the Little League baseball game. I showed up at the city offices. There's 3 teams. And the other 2 coaches said, hey, our main goal here is to get 3 even teams. And I was pretty naive. Well, that was not their objective at all. Their objective was to win every game. And so so I go out thinking, okay, we all worked together. We all got 3 even teams. We didn't win a single game, and it wasn't any fun. The next year when I went to the draft, I knew what game I was playing there. Not that I wanted to go and stick it to somebody else. I still wanted to be honest, but at least I knew that what they were telling me was not the truth. And that's where I want people of Utah to know that what they're telling you is not the truth. What the legislators are telling you is not the truth, for the most part. It's a metaphor. It's based on something that they're trying to grapple with this and come up with something that you might buy as a voter. I want people just to say, I think I see what's happening. I think I know what game we're playing. And if the media tells me something it doesn't mean that it's true. In fact, it probably means the opposite. If these certain legislators who have a reputation for pushing bad bills are pushing a bill, it probably is not trustworthy. And that's, I guess, I don't know, just being a savvy, participant in the game that's actually being played. And that's a good thing if people feel like they know what's going on.
Wouldn't you think that Mr. Cox would want to drag out those 28 signatures and put this to bed?
Yeah, if he was honest, he would.
Yeah, if he had them, he would do it.
I've got all sorts of stuff on my website from my case where I pointed out a judge saying the jury doesn't need to know the truth. The wool can be pulled over their eyes. Right. I've got R5 documents showing that the federal government says that the way that I billed was the only legal way to bill. They still lied, and they think they won because I'm a convicted felon. Right. I think we're finding out just how much weight that really carries these days, right? While the real criminals manipulate the rules, Mr. Cox, you either have 28,000 signatures or you don't. I just did the math. 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, for 4 weeks will take somebody counting 2.9 signatures per minute. And in a month, you can embarrass the blazes out of Mr. Lyman. But the reality is that if you actually had 29,000 and you proved it, I'm pretty sure from what I've met of you, Phil, that you'd probably go, you know what? Congratulations. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for showing the citizens of this state that you deserve to be in this election. And I'll see you at the next go round, the next time that there's a governor's race. But thank you for doing the right thing for the citizens of Utah and allowing everybody in Utah to know that you were right. But the fact that he doesn't means there's a doubt that's hanging over the state of Utah like a bad cloud with a thunderstorm that won't go away. And the head of your state, your governor, is responsible for that. Not you and not the Supreme Court for not hearing it, because they didn't say he was right and you were wrong. They said, Utah, we're sending this back to you. Your big boys and girls, solve the problem and demonstrate that.
And it says, like, even though that happens, Dr. Fleming, it doesn't even matter if he doesn't even show, like if he doesn't have his signatures, which don't apply to the party. But let's say it did, and he didn't even have his signatures. It doesn't matter because the legislatures that we have now, they don't care. I mean, they pretty much know he didn't get it, but they just say, oh, well, he could have gotten them. He had more time. Or, I mean, it doesn't matter at this point. So I think that's why he says, I don't need to prove I really got them. He knows that he didn't get them. And he knows that the legislature pretty much protects him. And I feel like that's where we come in as citizens. So Laurie, to your point, we have to start sending in letters and demanding the legislature to do their job. And that's to remove him.
And I would demand to see the signatures and get them counted. Because what he's telling you is that you have to obey the rules, but he doesn't.
That's right.
I thought we just had a major election over this principle.
Yep.
We either have a two-tiered system or we have an equal system. If there's a two-tiered system, the people in Utah should be packing their bags, and I wouldn't recommend that they go to Florida or California right now. Don't come to Texas. We don't need any more people. But, maybe Canada.
Yeah.
It's going to be a
51st state. Yeah.
So, Tracie, based on what you just said, is there anything that the citizens of Utah can do, file anything that we feel that our votes actually were stolen?
Yeah, we are filing, especially as a delegate, you were disenfranchised. what the law does is it actually, the state delegates part of the primary election. So most people don't understand that the convention process is part of the primary. It's under the primary election code. It's part of the process, and they'll try to construe it to confuse you. But part of the convention process for the Republican Party, which he was seeking nomination for, is the convention. And so it's an actual vote. It is a vote. And it got disenfranchised. So they'll tell you that they always have immunity and that they can be protected. But once you notify them and you tell them of the harm and they continue just to let it go. So if we tell them, hey, Cox was disqualified at convention, that's what the law says. You need to get him out and redo that election and do it right. And if you continue it down this, it's called willful misconduct. And willful misconduct, you are personally liable, and we will sue you, because Tracie will do it by herself if she has to, and she'll do it for free. But that is what we can do. Is, you know what? That was an unlawful election. It was an illegal primary, and including Derek Brown, who is the Attorney General, they need to remove him. He did not get qualified for the ballot. They need to redo that primary election, that direct primary. Because what it is there's an indirect primary or a direct primary that the party can use. And as part of our process is we use a primary convention. And if you get 60%, you go directly to the general ballot. You don't need to use a state primary. But if you get only two, that the two highest and they never reached the 60%, then they advance to the primary. But it does not allow for the lieutenant governor to deem like she's a queen and add everybody that she wants onto that ballot. It's not how the law reads, and it's not how it works. And that's what I would say as citizens we can do. I am filing a lawsuit, and I'll have, and we'll declare it as a class action right now. But that, to me, as citizens, you're going to speak the most. Even with the Utah Supreme Court, the one justice instead of the 5 panel didn't even review him. He didn't even get due process. He didn't get his fair chance in court. And that Supreme Court justice, that his name's Justice Durant, he took a law and misapplied it to order to justify it. So not only did he misconstrue a United States Supreme Court ruling, he took a law and applied it that didn't even, it's plain language in the code that says this part shall not apply to a qualified political party. Okay. So I'm going to send notices to the Supreme Court justices too, because that's not right that they don't allow it. They need to fix it.
So which Supreme Court justices?
The Utah Supreme Court. That's who we have in charge of.
Right. So it's important that people know that there's a difference between the Supreme Court of the United States and the state Supreme Court of Utah. And so listening to some of what Laurie's been pointing to, and I've been listening to people for too many years now. Can you lay a foundation, Tracie and or Phil, for action that you're going to take, and how every person in Utah can help join you and what role they can do? So clearly on a class action, they could add their name as a citizen to the class action, but you also want them doing something, I think, physically, which is whether that is showing up to their elected officials once a week, once a month, letting them know that they would like action taken on this, showing up wherever your state government is held. Is it Salt Lake City in Utah? Okay. That was going to be my guess, but I don't live in Utah. Because it's more than just knowing that you have a good plan. It's knowing how somebody else, all these people that are listening and the people that they will tell, for them to know what to do and to continue to do it. Because even though I know we're not talking about all the potential activity that's going to happen. I think it's important for people to know that there's going to be activity and they can help you. And I need you to help lay that out. I know that's what Laurie really does here. I'm just here for looks and discussion about law. And I'm not really, it's the three of you that are doing a lot in the state of Utah. Laurie by holding the podcast, Phil by being the person out there raising this, and Tracie, all the work that you're doing, which is, got to be honest with you, Laurie and Phil, I mean, you're just minor by comparison.
Yeah.
Because I know what's going on. So, the reality is there's a lot of work, but they need to know how to help you, Phil and Tracie and Laurie, and to be cohesive on this, because it's one thing to listen and say, you've got great ideas and you're going to do it. But these people in Utah need to know how they can help you on a daily basis, beginning tomorrow morning and every day thereafter.
There is another really important thing that people can and should do, and it deals with the GOP, with the party. We've got the state nominating convention coming up in May. We'll elect new leadership for the GOP. New precinct chairs at the local level will happen between now and then. New county chairs will happen in the next couple of months. And if you've got a county that has really lined up like a soldier behind the establishment, it's a good time to step in and change that. It's a good time to run for to be a precinct chair or a county chair. And I'm hoping, honestly, I'm really, really hoping that in the GOP that we see a red wave, a conservative wave of people come in there who say where the GOP should have stood up, should have done something. They did less than what they should have done, and we're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so, that's happening right now, like I say, in the next few weeks, and a lot of education to take place. So getting involved with your precincts, calling your county chair, finding out where they stand on things, finding out who else is going to run, and aligning yourself with people who are going to take on this issue is really important right now.
Agreed on that. So Phil, Tracie, I don't know the answer to this. Does SB 54 allow Spencer Cox to steal the election forever going forward?
Yeah.
As they tweak it, I mean, they're going to be tweaking it.
I mean, if they keep so the actual law doesn't allow what they're doing.
Right.
They're just using the signature. They're using that signature mechanism to help with the fraud. That's the fraud part. The law doesn't even say that it does what they're doing. That's my point where I said, oh, they're just going to go in there, fix it. They're going to go fix it. Well, no, the law doesn't even say that you can do what you're doing. Just follow the law and it'll be okay. Because he can't, the party does not have to allow to pick its nominee with signature gathering. The signature gathering is a way to get qualified for a ballot. Well, we don't qualify. Our people don't qualify that way through our convention process, which the party is full on can have. But the narrative is they've twisted the law and told everybody, well, yeah, you have to accept signatures. No. So it's like Spencer could have accepted signatures, but once he got disqualified, sorry, you spent the money. That's not how we pick our candidates. Sorry. Like Derek Brown, sorry, you spent the money, but that's not how we pick our candidates. The only two advance, not. So if they just follow the law, yeah, we would be fine.
How much did Spencer Cox spend buying votes?
On signatures, I think he was at 160,000 and just paying for signatures.
It's created a business for their friends, exactly what it is. Right. And then it funnels back in because their friends are the ones that own the signature gathering companies. So they've just used the signature gathering process to commit fraud. It's a good narrative. And, Deidre stood on the floor and said she loved SB 54 because it made the convention process.
That's only $5.71 per signature.
Ah,
Well, they don't really get them, doctor. It's just for acting, just acting like you get the
Yeah,
signature.
Walton said he spent close to 500,000 getting signatures because he got about 50,000 signatures, just so we could make sure that he had the 28,000. And they lied to him as well, told him all kinds of stuff on the front end. So he was jumping through hoops right and left. Then he finds out after the fact that those were hoops they didn't have to jump through, those that were on the inside. So.
right. Well, even
Yeah,
Tread
I know they
Stanks
didn't get
got
the
screwed.
28,000 signatures. I'm just saying that basically what they just told you was you just got bought at $5.71 per false signature. Okay. Which should make you feel pretty cheap in the state of Utah right now, because that's what your vote got bought for.
Well, we just feel cheated here in Utah. So as we begin to wrap up, Phil, what would you like to tell your followers? What would all the viewers, all the people who went out there and wrote your name in?
Be of good cheer. Again, every day when you find more reality is a good day. And this fight is just on the beginning. It's just at the front end. It's funny. I find out that people think that we should be so deflated because we lost. It's like, no, this is round 3 of a 9-round bout, and we're in it for the long haul. I feel an obligation to exhaust all the administrative remedies. I'm not a sore loser. It's not what it's about. It's about Utah's right to choose a candidate, and right now that's not the way it works. So I guess really it's be of good cheer, talk to people, don't be critical of the process. Let the process work, and jump in and support it.
How many write-ins did you get?
200,511.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or maybe it was 551.
Wow.
You got 7.16 times as many actual votes as he got pretend write-ins.
Right.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. That right.
That says something about the people of Utah. Every one of those people who wrote your name in has an opportunity to say their write-in vote counts. And the way they're going to show that their write-in vote counts is to help you right now drive this message home at the legislature in Salt Lake City, and to follow through on your 10 votes count campaign. Imagine what, 200,511? Is that what you said?
551 is what it was. Yeah.
551. So you did even better. So 200,551 people could do. Can you imagine if 200,551 people showed up at the legislature in Salt Lake City and demanded that the elected officials address this problem? Do you think the elected officials would address the problem?
Yes.
Do you think the media around the country would show up for 200,551 people?
I would hope so. Yeah.
Do you think President-elect Trump, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just 5 more days, hold it together, country, for 5 more days. In 5 days, would be interested in hearing about this, the state of Utah showing up to demand, you follow the law.
Mm-hmm.
You follow the law.
Right.
So, last question. 4 years, unfortunately, I think I'll say at my age, it goes by fast. So, look at what happened to Trump. The 2020 election was stolen, and now all of the media out there is pretty much saying that they know it was stolen.
Right.
And he is our next president as of Monday. So 4 years is going to come pretty quick. obviously you're going to rerun while you keep fighting and Tracie keeps fighting and all of us, all of us Utah citizens keep fighting. It's going to come quick. When do you start pounding the pavement for the next election?
I mean, right now, and I found in this election, my whole purpose was to try to expose corruption, and I found out
did a
that
good job.
yeah, I think we did, and found out that that's actually a really good platform if you want to run for office too, especially where people are observing so much corruption. So I think we just stay the course. We'll pace ourselves and we'll figure out what makes sense as far as messaging, but we'll keep just fighting this fight. I think this fight is the fight that people recognize as authentic. Anything else would be, position seeking, office seeking, and that's definitely not what we're about. We're about fighting this good fight.
Well, Phil, you are the unfiltered truth. I mean, you're the guy out there. Dr. Fleming's the guy out there. Tracie's the woman out there. And I appreciate everything.
Oh, apparently we do know the difference between men and women. That is good.
Oh, we do.
Delighted.
Yeah.
That came out in yesterday's hearing with for the DOD secretary, that the Congress of the United States didn't seem to have any confusion about what a man or a woman was. I mean, the questions about the U.S. military was very clear. They didn't say it, they, them. It was women. So clearly,
we're making
progress. United States. We've gotten to the point that we now know. I mean, I've always known. I mean, it's an SRY gene phenomenon, but for the people that were confused about biology, we have, and Laurie just demonstrated that apparently even the non-biologists have got it figured out that there is a difference between men and women, and it's pretty clear and frequently not hard to understand. So Tracie, I'm glad she recognized you as a woman and didn't botch it up with Phil or myself. So we are making progress. In 4 years, we might even be able to understand what our children are. The worst thing to do is to give me an open microphone, Laurie.
Well, all right. I guess we'll wrap up.
Thank you.
So we look forward to what's coming up in the very near future. We won't say anything, but there'll be another podcast, and we look forward to that. Dr. Fleming, as always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your legal expertise. And I look forward to Monday and what the future holds for the United States as well as for Utah.
And for those people that would like to help Mr. Cox, I suggest that you let President Biden know that you'd like to get a pardon for him now, because he still has 5 days to get a pardon for him. And if Mr. Cox, you're listening, I'd suggest that you get to whoever is, as soon as Bondi is actually accepted as the new AG, I think you're that gap just margin. So you want to get over to President Biden today. Call his office because, with the people that are being pardoned, you stand a potential.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks,
all right.
Laurie.
Okay.
Thank
I
you
won't be
to
coming
all
to
of you.
Utah anytime soon.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. See y'all.
Thank you.